Hello, everybody. My name is Austin Randolph. As always, if you like the content, kind of what I'm doing, basically, if you like or agree with what I am endlessly blabbering about, feel free to give me a subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. Follow me on TikTok. The TikTok is Hotel Soap with a 1 instead of an L. I'm kind of like the most active on there. I'm, trying to get TikTok famous and trying. Anyways, let's try to do this in one take. Let's talk about what's going on with the used guitar market, because I've seen so many different things all the way on one end of the spectrum. You have all the old timers that are basically like, well, everybody got spoiled because of COVID and now they got blah, 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 blah. And then you have you have a ton of different conflicting viewpoints. So I want to kind of talk about what I actually think is going on, because everybody trying to sell a guitar on Reverb right now is going, what the fuck's going on? Like, nobody's buying my stuff. And by the way, let me just preface everything I'm going to say with, I don't work in this industry. I just participate in it. I mean, that's just kind of like what I do for fun, is typically buy and sell guitars and then obviously play them. So, this isn't any kind of review, like I said, anything like that. But, I really think at the end of the day, most aspects of doing business come down to supply and demand, right? When demand is super high and supply isn't keeping up to demand, demand's up here and everybody wants something and there's only a limited amount to go around, then you can charge more for that thing. And kind of like what we saw with houses, what was that? Like leading right up until when interest rates started going through the roof. Maybe 2 years ago. Up until then, like probably 2018, 2019, all the way through 2020. I don't even remember when they started jacking rates up. End of 22 or something like that. You had a finite amount of resources to go around, finished homes, right? And you had everybody wanting to buy them, which means if you were selling one, you could charge more for it because it was in higher demand. Right when the COVID pandemic happened and all of a sudden people that had jobs they could do from home, they were spending a lot, their expenses went down because their commute went away. Maybe they got a refinance on the house, maybe they were in a job that was essential, like they worked for Amazon or something. But what you really saw was a whole bunch of people in the world, like the corporate world, do really, really well, and a whole bunch of other people just, like, if things were kind of rough, they got worse. If you were doing pretty well, things got better. Economically, that's what we saw, as well as we had a whole bunch of people who their 8 hours at the office magically turned into about 2.5 hours of answering emails at home. And the rest of the time, they're like, well, Jesus Christ, I don't have a hobby. What do I do? Well, guess what a lot of people started doing? Playing guitar. So you saw the demand for guitars and amplifiers and effects pedals as people started getting into this. Like, if you're watching this video, you're into this, right? Like, this is your hobby, this is your interest, it's a lane that, and I'm just stereotyping, if you don't follow this, I'm sorry, but it's a lane of things for guys to get into and nerd out about, typically. And you had a whole bunch more people getting into it. So the price of those things, whether you're just getting into it or making your way up the kind of, all your way to, from your Squire Bullet all the way to Joe Bonamassa's, what does he call it? Nerdville, whatever, where that's where he keeps his, like, 59 Les Pauls, 58 Tellys, your no-casters. Like, there's a whole spectrum, and, like, there's a whole spectrum of things to spend. There's a whole collector's aspect that kind of goes linearly along with the amount of time that you've spent doing this thing, typically. On the manufacturing end, all of a sudden, over the course of like 2 years, you had your demand like triple for the product you make. And because we live in a global era where a lot of times, really the only local, like I live in Detroit, right? The only major local guitar company is Heritage in Kalamazoo. And they're a pretty small operation. But if you're a global operation, like really any other guitar company, Gibson manufacturers all the way down in Nashville. I'm just looking around the room, if you're Ibanez, you manufacture in Asia. If you're Epiphone up there, you manufacture in Asia, but different parts of Asia. So my point is, it's a whole global supply chain, and for decisions to be made to change up manufacturing, i.e., we need to pick up the pace, that takes a long time. It takes a really long time to acquire the wood that you need, the paint that you need, the metal that you need, the strings that you need, the electronics you need, all the way down to if you're gonna bump up production, you probably need more soldering irons at these facilities in these cities outside of wherever. And you get my point, right? You can get as detailed as you want about it, but if you want to start bumping up production, that's going to take a really, really, really long time from that decision being made all the way to, this thing is now done and available at Sweetwater or whatever. So what you saw happen was the market got just inundated with new inventory right when people are going back to work and losing interest. Right now, if you look, you can go on Reverb and people are still kind of asking and expecting 21, 22 prices right now. And good luck, man, because the market's kind of correcting just like markets do, where if you go shopping, I was watching the dudes from Casino Guitars, the one dude with the crazy hair and the one I think they're in North Carolina, one of the Carolinas, and the other dude that's super Carolina guy. I like those guys, but they were talking about this, and I really appreciate how transparent and honest they are about the business end of things, because they were talking about how we have never had a year, i.e. this past year, 2023, where there were so many specials direct from manufacturers, i.e. I think PRS had a huge one out of their SE line. It was literally 20% off all brand new SE guitars all year long. Epiphone had something similar, I think. And there's a reason all these manufacturers are running all these specials on brand new guitars, and that reason is their production finally caught up. Again, because it's a global operation, takes a lot of time. And now they got all this inventory, man. And people are not flooding the market like they were right when the COVID lockdown happened. So when it comes to used guitars like this, I'm actually gonna try to make a video about this guitar and parts casters in general, maybe this weekend, and kind of talk about mistakes to make when you're buying one, because you gotta be careful. But point is, Reverb is filled with used guitars right now, and I went to go sell one of the ones I have sitting over there right now, and yeah, dude, selling guitars, used guitars, has gotten pretty difficult because everybody got a little bit spoiled from the massive wave of interest over the last few years of people looking for used gear on Reverb. Now that you can get such a good deal new from the manufacturers because they have so much inventory to get rid of, basically everything's on special all the time, yeah, the value of your used gear is probably going to go back down to, when used gear was a little less desirable, when you actually had to take a little bit of a hit buying, and you couldn't just turn around, play something for 4 months and still get exactly what you paid for it, unless it was something incredibly desirable, which is not really what we're talking about here. Anything with Gibson on the headstock tends to kind of keep its value better. There's little rules like that, but just, again, in general, market got flooded with new inventory right after demand started to kind of come down. So any of the demand that's still coming in, it's turning into, to throw out some stock market terms, you have a little bit more of a buyer's market right now. It's not just a seller's market, because this, there's way more inventory to choose from. I mean, like, I remember when Sire first came out, right, with their guitars, and people on the internet liked them. You couldn't find them anywhere. For like a year, they were back ordered everywhere, and now you can find them everywhere. So, a couple notes to go over. There was a huge increase in demand from the COVID lockdown. That demand stuck around for a little bit afterwards, but you couldn't find any inventory anywhere, so everybody was buying stuff used on Reverb and Sweetwater's gear exchange thing and whatever. But the big one, and I think the reason why it's so hard to get rid of used gear right now on Reverb, is manufacturers caught up, but they caught up, I don't want to say too late. Obviously, they're in the business of making money. They did the best they could. But they caught up to demand right when demand was starting to come down. So the market is just flooded with new inventory right now. So there's a whole bunch of reasons, but it's nothing that is like completely unexplained. And I don't know, maybe you guys, hopefully you learned something from my business background, kind of taking a look at the last couple years, and at least me, my dumb ass sitting in this chair over here, taking a look back over the last few years. It makes sense. It makes sense why the demand for used gear has cooled down, and it makes sense why the buyer holds more power, because they have way more options now than they did 2 years ago. And like I said, if you haven't figured it out yet, let this be a warning for ye who are gonna buy something and expect to just turn around and get your money for it 6 months from now after you play it for a little bit. Maybe don't do that right now. So I hope this made sense to you guys, and I hope maybe you learned something. What do you guys think? Do you think I'm out of my mind? Have you just been shucking used guitars no problem? Maybe, maybe it's something specific to brands. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And I guess that's all I got, man. Take care, guys. Have fun.